And we're live.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? How's it going?
What's up? What's up?
We're here back with Marked Podcast or
And
live.
Vlad, you're back finally from the conference. Whoop whoop.
I'm back to life, dude.
Back to life.
Yeah.
New man.
Uh, yeah. I mean, it's nice to start a year with something that gets you going, gets you pumping. So, yeah. I think what are we talking about today? Today we obviously we just love talking. We just can't stop talking. But I think we wanted to be a little more intentional. I think even for Marked, we wanted to just kind of focus on building fulfilled life, overcoming hardships, just living your life to the fullest, n- live out your potential, right?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's important.
And I figured today, something that I guess I can talk about today, something I had to overcome and figure out without a blueprint, so to say, right? Is losing a parent, right? I lost my dad. I mentioned it a couple times. And it's something, in general, losing somebody, losing a loved one, losing a friend to any form, whether it's like in my instance where my dad passed away from cancer, right? A disease, whether it's somebody passing away from suicide, whether
And
it's,
how old were you?
I was 18, 19, somewhere around there. Um, remember the day pretty clearly, to be honest. It was July 4th, 2016. The day before that,
Hmm.
basically, I was just, well, not even the day before that. I'm saying that because my father happened to be at that time in Ukraine. Um, and that's a whole long story of why he chose to be there. But basically, I was watching fireworks that day, went outside. I was just chilling in my house. I go outside, I look at the stars, and I see fireworks shooting up. And there was like this inner, voice just like asking to, like, not even asking, more of like, kind of like an advocate, right? Like saying, hey, he's going through pain. He has stage 4 cancer. He's in a lot of excruciating um, pains that if he goes away with me, um, that he'll be in a better place. And as much as it was hard, I kind of just like, okay, like shed a tears and kind of just let go,
Okay,
and
so for you, it wasn't like a sudden, like you guys, from what I'm hearing, your dad already had something going on.
yeah,
For how long?
bro. So he actually had cancer for, I think it was like around 3 to 4 years from the time he was diagnosed or something like that. It was a
Hmm.
long time.
Okay.
I don't remember exactly. My memory kind of towards that stuff down there is I've developed like a neural way of dealing with it, right? And I'll talk about it later on. But um, yeah, he was going through it for way longer than they gave him, right? So like we prayed about it and everything, and he, I believe, on those prayers, kind of like that's what kept him going in a way. I know it kind of sounds from a medical terminology standpoint, or not even terminology, but knowledge standpoint, sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but like, bro, he had like 6 months. They told him from the time he was diagnosed. This man, my father, um, gave it a good fight. Like no joke. Like he was going through like pains and aches and all this stuff. Like, I mean, I would hear this man scream sometimes just from the pain. But in terms of like him living, and that's a debatable, term to use with that, whether that's living or not, right? And ultimately, that's kind of what kind of gave me that ability, or to say, I let go of him.
Yeah,
Uh,
but I also feel like for you, and that's kind of what I want to highlight and maybe talk about it a little more, touch on it. It's not also that you know your dad passed away. And that's a pretty hard event, right, to live through. But I think also living with the knowledge that your dad might not make it, and then for a while, and you still have to kind of live with that and try to support him and stay sane. Like, how did that work with you? I know, and you were like in your mid, teens, late teens.
Yeah.
How did that work for you, man?
So it was tough, man. Honestly, it was tough. Like at that time, finishing up high school, you're also like trying to, in my case, right, get an education, fill out scholarships, all this stuff, fill out for schools, and at the same time, try to be that, I guess, level of support for your family where emotionally, you're not like showing that like this is getting to you, right? So in a way, people kind of look for you as in my case, I'm the oldest, right? So people look at
Hmm.
onto you to find a degree of sanity, right? Where it's like,
Hmm.
okay, he's going through all this, but he's still staying, sane, um, in as much as he can in such a situation. And I mean, there were situations where I did not, right? Like where I legit kind of just lost it, bro. I just like broke down, and it wasn't all sunshines and rainbows, so to say. And the thing that kind of got me back on and kept me moving day by day was just community of people, bro, that I kept around me, like really good friends, that
And who
like,
who were those friends?
bro, so one of them was actually Bogdan, who we had last episode, right?
Hmm.
And even in that episode, I kind of talked about how, he's been like that Bible verse where it talks about there's friends that are closer than a brother, honestly.
Hmm.
And he's been that for me. You've been that for me, bro. Like, I have a friend, Tima, in Ukraine also. Like, all those little people, like, and there's probably names that I'm not even thinking of, like,
Hmm.
um, but there's so many of these like people that all played a role. Maybe to some it might seem smaller than others, or vice versa, whatever. But ultimately, everybody played a big role, right, in the
Hmm.
grand scheme of things. And I wouldn't, honestly, I can say that I would not be here if not for those people and for just like, that support that they gave me and encouragement. Um, in a way, they kind of helped carry that weight, and we're called to do that, right? As people of faith, to help each other carry each other's burdens to whatever capacity we can. And that's ultimately what I want to say to other people. If you know somebody going through something similar to mine, right? Whether it's, a death, or maybe somebody who just is going through cancer in their family, or themselves are going through it, just be there for them. The ministry of presence is such an underrated thing, I believe,
Hmm.
bro. Like, just being there, listening to the person, just, giving them a hug. And I can talk about that from a medical standpoint, like oxytocin release and all this stuff that happens just from being in contact with somebody, right? And yeah, bro, it, the Lord
Well,
really taught me.
listen, I see you like right now, and I've been like kind of looking at you in the past few years. Um, like you're really seems like you're kind of taking care of your family, like your mom.
Yeah.
You have a younger sister. You had a brother that you lived with. I think he got married, so he lives on his own. But I've seen you throughout those years kind of continue being like that rock in your family. Do you think, what do you think kind of, do you think that situation with your dad, whether the process that you were learning as a teen or maybe, him passing away, do you think that kind of push you in that direction to take on that responsibility?
You know, I since I was young, I've kind of had that mentality. I guess I don't know if it was maybe programmed into me through my military dad. He was military, and so I kind of always had that maybe like upbringing of like you're the oldest, you kind of have to be the backup if anything happens. And I mean that reality kind of always was in the back of my head. I
Hmm.
really didn't think it would ever happen. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like you know, obviously my dad asked me like to help him out if I had that conversation, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
he's like, hey, if I do pass away, I need you to be strong for them and make the tough decisions, right? And, some of those decisions, not everybody will understand in the moment or at all, maybe. And maybe my whole life I'll go by and nobody will understand why I did certain things the way I did. And I had to sacrifice a lot of things. But it made me who I am today, right? I because of all that stuff, I'm able to relate to certain people that others can't. I can be kind of like that father figure to them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny. My older, well, they're not all of them are older, but some of them are just like, bro, you're such a dad. You're such a dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like even have my own kids, right? I'm not married or anything like that, but like somehow through this whole experience, it matured me to another degree of, maturity, where I'm able to do that naturally, where I don't even realize it, but I'll act in certain ways where it's like a dad, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's towards my sister, whether it's towards my friends, right? Like, getting them food or, preparing stuff and all this kind of stuff, that I don't even think twice, but it just now is kind of like natural for me. And, I guess to reiterate that question of like, whether it's something that I was prepared for and whether, it's something that you can just be trained up into, I would say not really. You can't. You can sort of give people the tools for it, but you're not given a blueprint like, hey, if your dad passes away or your mom passes away or your brother, whoever, like if somebody leaves your life, I don't think we're ever fully prepared for that.
Well, I think it's more of not even prepared, but also like the your attitude, right?
Right.
Because you could have reacted in a lot of different ways, and you could have been angry and other things. And to me, it's interesting that instead of doing that, you decided, okay, I'm going to continue to building what my dad's been doing and kind of continuing the legacy and taking care of the people he would take care of.
Yeah. And bro, that's something that you just touched on that. Thank you for reminding me that, because that was a conversation I so to say. I don't know if it was with God or if it was with myself. I guess in a one way it was kind of with both.
Hmm.
But I was like, you know what? People in my situation end up being a statistical number. I remember this really clearly. I remember like thinking, I'm like, man, I'm not like, there's people who this kind of stuff happens and their parents have like a life insurance policy or whatever, and they're well taken care of, right?
Hmm.
I'm not in those shoes, right? I'm a kid, a guy who kind of grew up by, pick yourself up by your bootstraps type of thing, right? And as much as I could, that's what I've been doing my whole life, right? Trying to get the good grades, to get the scholarships, to get into the good schools, to achieve a level of security for my kids, for my posterity that I myself never had. And I know, it doesn't all play just by me. It's by God too, right? But I believe in that because, there's a verse that talks about a good man takes care of his children's children, right? That's not just my kids' kids.
Hmm.
It's like just 2-3 generations ahead.
Yeah.
And having that type of mindset of like, hey, I'm doing steps right now in my life. It might not be easy, but I'm preventing it from people down the road from having this type of problem, right?
Yeah.
Or
And
helping prevent that, like lowering the chances.
and just to go off that what you just said, have you have you actually talked to somebody or maybe had an encounter with someone who went through similar things and you were able to just kind
100%.
of help them out?
Yes.
You have like a story or two you can share?
Yes. I don't know if I can share their name. I just, for privacy's sake, if I
Yeah.
don't have it, I don't want to share their name. But there was this lady, not lady, young lady. She actually um, lost her dad shortly after I lost my dad. And I remember her clearly asking me, like, how did you deal with this? How are you dealing with this? Like, you seem so at peace about all this. And like, you seem like you have this, like, you're set. And to be honest, I told her, I'm like, I really don't know. Like, I'm just trying to do my best. Honestly, that would be my best response. Like the little things that I know that I kind of read in the Bible are just, you know, I believe we're built innately when we're born, right, with the ability to determine good and bad, right? Like, I bet everybody listening and watching this can agree that killing a baby is wrong, right? Or killing an innocent life is wrong. Were we programmed that as a child or whatever? No, we weren't. It's just something we're like born with. And, you know, we can talk about that like theologically, you know, the tree of good and evil, knowledge, all that stuff, you know, that moment, boom, you know, we know. And ultimately, like, there's just people kind of like also, you know, they teach you stuff, they give you advice, and you can choose to take it, you can choose not to take it. My kind of end with that is everybody has advice to say, right? But not everybody is willing to take that advice for themselves. So I usually just kind of, you know, if I saw somebody going through something similar to mine and I'm like, oh, that looks like it helped them a lot, I'm like, I'm going to take that as a gold nugget and I'm going to use that in my life. That's ultimately what kind of helped me, right? And just also, you know, I shared with other people what kind of helped me in those situations, which was like, for example, prayer, right? Morning meditation, listening to people who had more of a positive outlook on life. I know, and it's kind of
Surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with the right people. But like, there's a level where I want to be careful when I say that, because you could be too positive. And what I mean by that is it gets to a point where it's unrealistic, right? And I get it, stuff can happen unrealistically, but you also want to have a level of where you're sober minded with what you're listening to, right? So I like to test the things, even if they are positive, right? So for example, if there's somebody telling me like, hey, which actually this is what happened to me. Somebody told me I should drop out of school to go, like, you know, I think it was like to just get a regular job type of thing, because in the moment that would, so to say, help my family more, right? More than I was helping at that time. And I'm like, no, I don't agree with you. And I'm happy I didn't, because ultimately I chose the delayed gratification route, where yes, I might be more struggling with certain things in the meantime right now, but in the end goal of things, I know it's going to be way better. Like, the fruit of it is going to be way better than that short gratification and easier path, right?
Yeah, I mean, advice by itself, I mean, everybody has a different experience, different way of reacting to things, and different personalities. So definitely, I think we all got to be really careful with what advice we give. I feel like unless you were really close, you know, you had a similar situation, or you know someone really well, maybe in that case, yeah, okay, you can give an advice. But man, a lot of times it's like, kind of like you said, it's just people trying to give their best, but a lot of times they don't even know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Um, so it's, yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a question that I was wondering. I know you have two siblings. They're both younger. Um, I'm curious, how did they react to it, and was it even tough for you to kind of continue building that relationship with them?
So I'll say this in the beginning, right, of this whole process. Yes, it really made our family kind of like step back and appreciate each other
Mm-hmm.
a lot more. And you know, in terms of like after that, it's just like the process of now, okay, I'm the oldest and I kind of have this like headship, I would call it, role now in the family. And, trying to like, based on how I was raised up to that moment, right, of my age, trying to pass that down, so to say, down
Mm-hmm.
to them to the best of my ability was really hard. And probably I've made mistakes along the way. Actually, not even probably. I have made mistakes along the way, and I adjusted like any other. I guess if I was a parent, would in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where you're like, okay, this didn't work, type of thing. With my sister, to be honest, dude, I'm kind of shocked because now we're closer than I ever been with my brother growing up, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. And I don't know if this has to do with genetics, that, women are more closer genetically than their father, take more attributes. And I was really close with my father, more with my father than my mother, to be honest. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, something about that relationship I have with her is just so different. And I've never thought this would happen, type of thing. With my brother, it's vice versa. It's kind of like we grew apart, to be honest. And
Mm-hmm.
he took on his point of views of life, and I try to convey as much as I could to him and pass that on. But that's life. We can't force people to take on our stuff, even if it's with good intent and all this stuff. Free will is free will, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think life is worth living if we don't have that free will. And yeah, ultimately, I still to this day try to bring her up, like teaching her about God as much as I can, making sure she has a personal relationship with him, but not like jabbing it down her throat, type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the way my father was with me. He was very personal, he was very relational, and gave me a lot of free space to explore. He was definitely not a helicopter parent, thank God. I you know, Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, where there's a degree of where you want to have malevolence or just like freedom for your um, children to make
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, because that develops their character and makes them functional adults in this world. Because if you're just spoon fed all your whole life, you're gonna enter into a world where, sorry, it's not that way. People are not nice. People are not gonna spoon feed you. They're you know it's a harsh world out there. And building up sort of this, like, when you get burned through a situation, you develop like a harder skin, right? And it's a great analogy for how kind of like life builds us up that way. It's the best teacher. Life is the best teacher, but its
Mm-hmm.
price is very expensive. And it's our time, it's our health, and everything else. But hopefully, from those situations, you develop into a better human being, with more character, godly character, and yeah, you're just able to navigate through those tough situations that life will throw at you, like in my situation.
Yeah.
Um,
So I know I know that when your dad passed away, I mean you were already older. You said you were 18, and it wasn't like you didn't grow up without a father, which is
right.
great. Um, and I think, going back and just kind of like looking back, like, okay, like I had this much time with my dad, and looking back and like learning from them, from these moments, what would you say you would take into your parenting? Like when you're going to become a dad, what are the things that you feel like you want to do specifically because, you don't know when the time's going to come, or we don't know how's it going to go. But what are the key things that you think you're gonna do with your kids to make sure you have that great relationship, like from what I hear, like you had with your dad,
Yeah.
and make sure you don't waste any time or any moments.
Yeah. So to quickly make a side note, because it kind of ties into this whole thing. So my father was an orphan.
Mm.
His dad left his mother, very shortly after he was born, and the mother just was a young mother, and she just dropped him off at an orphanage, and essentially a
Wow.
couple years later, his grandma found him, took him in, and raised him.
Mm.
So he himself was trying to raise me, right, as a father without a father,
Mm-hmm.
and he did his best. And I guess the little tips and tricks, I guess I could say, are that ministry of presence, right? So I talked about how my father spent a lot of quality time with me, just talking to me, not as a child, but like on the same level as him, right? I think sometimes we like to talk to kids and we're like, oh, I'm right here and you're down here. But no, that's like not a good way to do it, because you're, I think in that way of speaking, you're building in them this level of, um, you know, doubt and kind of like constraint already in their mind. And I know why some parents want to do it that way, because they think they're teaching them like honoring their elders and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe, honor is given where honor is done, right? So like if I provide you honor, most likely from a young age, you'll understand that, and you'll be like, okay, this person doesn't treat me like, low dirt or whatever. Like I'm gonna honor them
Right.
back, and I want to treat them with respect, because they could not talk to me like this, right? And most likely they will see, examples of their parents' way of communicating versus some other adults, and they'll be like, man, my parents are so much better at communicating than this guy who thinks I'm like this low kid who knows nothing or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that would be one big point. Another one is, my father from a very young age gave me a Bible, a grown-up Bible, a NIV Bible, like full on, and I just read it. And he just tried to always have me like read a couple chapters before I sleep. That built up something in me in two ways: spiritually and in discipline, right? And I think learning discipline as young as that age, like I was like, like when I got it around 8 or 10, somewhere in that range, um, learning that every day that I need to like just kind of spend that time and devote to reading, and it developed a level of discipline in me that carried on to the other things I did in life, right? Nobody wants to go to school and learn subjects they don't want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as a result of kind of like, reading certain chapters that I didn't like to read in the Bible, Book of Numbers, or, the genealogy of Jesus. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to do that. But in the end, it's like, you go through that and you're like, I did it. You build that resilience and you're like, I'm able to take on this task of whatever it is in the day, and overcome it despite not feeling like I need to or whatever not.
Right.
Um, and then last but not least, just, believe that my grandma has this phrase, and she tells me this, and in Ukrainian it's "не всегда так есть," or "не всегда так," I think it's "есть," she said. But basically, in translation, it's like, not always will it be this way, and not always
Mm-hmm.
will it stay this way, right? And
Yeah.
so I just kind of, despite any type of situation that throws my way, I'm like, this too shall pass, and
Mm-hmm.
this too shall pass.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Thank you for sharing all of that. It's amazing. To me, it's always amazing to see people who can learn from their past experience and bring into the future. And I think that's what we talked about in the beginning of having that attitude of like being ready for anything life throws at you. Because again, like today we live in the comfort of our home. Tomorrow we don't know what's going to happen. I
Right.
mean, we see that in the world. And nothing is stable. Nothing. And if you look throughout the history, right? That's the one thing you look. There's a civil war. There's war. There's conflicts. There's this. There's things. There's that. As long as we learn, we overcome, and that's kind of the goal, right?
Yeah.
Even what our heart behind this is, we're learning, overcoming these things that were stumbling blocks, or maybe things that there were like a barrier. But once you overcome one barrier, you know how to do it. Then you can climb a bigger one. And
Right.
now all you know, there's nothing in front of you that can stop you. And living that life, fulfilled life, it doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect and amazing, right? Like there are hardships that life, everything that life throws at you. So yeah, dude, thank you for sharing. Thank you for encouraging
Thank
us.
you for interviewing, bro. This is great.
Yeah, thank you for encouraging us to like learning those things again from your dad and from your experience. Hopefully, we find more people that listen to it and just find us
Yeah,
helpful. And if you did, message us, comment. Would love to hear your thoughts and your stories. Maybe you went through something like this and you wanted to share, and you're doing great, or maybe like we would love to maybe get you on podcasts and
for sure.
maybe talk on Discord or something like that. It would be fun. But yeah, I think we're out of time, but it was nice
Yep.
hanging out with y'all.
Love you guys.
Daniyl, any last words?
Um, be
You
blessed.
have
Love
15
ya.
seconds.
Bye.
Okay. Okay. Bye. Good night.